Welcome to the Women's Health Podcast. I'm Marika Hart from Herasphere.
And I'm Anthony Lowe, the Physio Detective. Together we interview leading authorities, answer questions, and share our thoughts to provide the general public with the best quality information we can find on all aspects of women's health. Please remember the materials and content on this podcast are intended as general information and for entertainment purposes only.
They are not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Now it's time to get cracking with the episode. So whether you're out walking your dog, driving the kids to school, or just sitting back enjoying a glass of wine, we hope you enjoy the show. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Women's Health Podcast. This is Marika Hart, and I am here, of course, with my co-host Anthony Lowe. Good morning, Anthony, or almost afternoon for you. How are you? You're muted, so we can't hear you.
Well, thank you. Rookie error. It's been a while. We've been so busy.
I know, it's insane. We kind of went through this phase of doing like 2 or 3 podcasts a week at the start of COVID. And then in the last, 2 months, you and I have really been, oh my God, head down, ass up, working so hard in our various jobs that I haven't seen your smiling face for ages. So it's very nice to see you, even though you can't see me because my internet is crap today.
It's one of those things. It has been fun though to work. I decided to run 4 courses, live courses online simultaneously, different areas of the world, and I found out that it's quite stressful.
Funny that.
Just a little bit. But it's been good. It's been a good experience. And also, you know, the guests that we had lined up also couldn't make the dates. So that was also part of the reason why we haven't been on the air as much because, you know, life comes up and that's okay.
But we're back and we've got 3 awesome guests lined up before Christmas, which I'm really excited about. One of which is with us right now. We have Amanda Thebe. And actually, Amanda, I didn't even ask you how to pronounce your surname. Is it Thebe or Thebe?
Correct. Thebe.
Thebe. Oh, thank goodness.
Awesome.
That would be embarrassing if I got your name wrong.
No, everybody gets it wrong. And then they can't say the name of the book. And then I'm just like, oh, for crying out loud. It's also very easy.
I'm with you. I chose a name for an online business that I soon realized that half the people didn't know how to pronounce. And I thought, oh, shit, what have I done? Okay, so today we have Amanda on the podcast. I actually heard of Amanda on another podcast and thought she was absolutely brilliant. And because her topic of interest is something that is of personal interest to me and might be for, you know, Anthony as well, maybe. Amanda she's a fitness professional. She's been in the game for over 20 years. She's done lots of podcasts, online summits. She's been in lots of media outlets. She lives in Houston, Texas, but does not have a Texan accent at all, which you will all come to realize. But she's written a book about menopause, and it's called, Menopocalypse, I thought.
It's exactly what it's called. Well done. Well done. See, you're amazing.
This is Menopocalypse, how I learned to thrive during menopause and how you can too. So welcome to the podcast. Oh, she's showing the book and I love the picture on the front. Look at those guns. Yes. Welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us.
We did it. We eventually got this going. It took a little bit of organization. Like Texas to Australia is not that easy to organize. But we did it. So it's evening time here. It's pitch black outside. I'm just about to have my dinner after I've spoke to you guys. And it's early morning, isn't it there?
Yeah, I got my coffee here. I got my coffee that I'm snuggling. I'm actually, truth be told, I am in bed with my doona over my lap. But that's because my husband's working from home. So he has the office. So I might as well be comfy. One of the reasons, Amanda, that we sort of had issue, we've been trying to book you for about 3 or 4 months now, but you got COVID during this and you were very, very ill. Tell us about how you're doing.
I'm fine. I'm completely fine now. And I actually forgot I'd had COVID until Anthony asked me how I was doing. And I was like, yeah, I had COVID. Did you know? And you know how your memory you can't remember? It's been quite the year, hasn't it? Like there's been so much happening. But in March, I got COVID. I never got tested positive for COVID, but I got a presumed positive diagnosis from the ER doctor, that because that was at the time the only place you could get a test. And so I went to ER, was really unwell. And, you know, it was like 3 weeks of feeling pretty crappy. And then I thought, oh, that's it, done. You know, and my kids were sick for a little bit, but not, you know, really poorly like me, like just like they had the trots, actually. They just couldn't stop going to the toilet. But I know, yeah. And, but then afterwards, I just never actually recovered. It took me ages. And so I became what's now being termed as a long haul COVID survivor. And really, it was essentially post-viral syndrome. You know, any virus you get, I didn't know this, actually. Obviously, I'm a bit of an expert now. But how I didn't survive COVID and thrive should be my next book. But but the post-viral syndrome is something that you can get from sort of like any virus. But this one was particularly brutal, and it just, every time I thought I was getting better, I just get knocked back again, and I couldn't exercise. I couldn't even do normal stuff like pottering around in the kitchen. Like I was exhausted and sleeping all the time. I was short of breath. You know, it was really rough. And then slowly things started to get better. And then I realized it was like probably 2 weeks after, I was like, oh, I think I'm fine. Like, I actually think I'm fine. You know, it wasn't just one day I woke up like that. I've been left with some residual stomach GI issues and that are very manageable, and that's literally all that's left. So I'm lucky that there was no permanent damage, because I'm in some long haul survivor groups where there's like hundreds of thousands of people that have got athletes as well. You know, like this, it doesn't have any rhyme nor reason to who hangs on to the post-COVID like symptoms. And some of them have got heart problems, lung problems, gut issues, permanent, you know, and mine aren't, thankfully.
I remember reading about, do you remember, Anthony, it was a doctor in Sydney, wasn't it, who got COVID, and he ended up with type 1 diabetes.
Oh, really?
Epilepsy.
You can get type 1? I thought you were always like, huh?
Yeah, he got type 1 diabetes, epilepsy, and something else. And he was like a working doctor in his early 50s, super fit. And he's now not allowed to drive. He's not allowed to ride his bike. And I was like, Jesus, this virus is weird, like how it affects so many different systems potentially. And
I think that's you right there, Mark. I think that's the thing. It affects so many different systems, so nobody actually knows how it's going to impact you. Like I had a really bad time with insomnia and like paranoia and really crazy dreams that were like, I'd wake up thinking that like somebody was trying to strangle me or suffocate me, and it was probably just the symptoms. But yeah, like the some of the damage that people that ended up with autoimmune diseases, right? It even reactivated Epstein-Barr virus for me, and it does for lots of others as well, because apparently there's like 90% of the population have that dormant in the body, and it sits there waiting for the perfect storm. And COVID is the perfect storm for Epstein-Barr to go, I'm going to come and make you feel wrecked and tired and shitty, even though you already do.
I'm going to kick you while you're down on the floor.
I'm going to kick you while you're down, and it did, yeah. But I'm fine now.
Well, that's fantastic. Sorry, Auntie, you going to ask something? You're muted. Oh, no? Okay, good. All right, well, let's get cracking. Amanda, let's talk about because obviously menopause is your passion. It's your area of interest. I obviously, in my mid-40s, I'm heading in that direction, and I'm starting to get some very interesting little things going on. So I guess it's really interesting of someone who's very much worked in the pre and postnatal fitness area for a really long time. As I'm getting older, and obviously that is of less interest to me personally, I'm sort of more getting into this, what's this sort of next stage in life going to be like? And one of the things I love about your message in your book, as well as, I haven't finished your book yet, but I'm just over halfway through, but
you
listening
just got
to you talk as well, is that there's not this total doom and gloom, this is going to be shit, there's nothing to look forward to. There's some hope in there in terms of like things that you can do. So I feel like you give people some strategies that maybe might help them along their journey. But if you want to share a little bit about your journey and how you came to be, really interested in diving into this field, that would be great.
And actually follow on to what you just said, Marika, because it like that, you hit the nail on the head. Like, so I've been in this fitness industry and really the wellness industry, because there's the nutrition side of my work as well, for decades. And we all specialize in these we do these different courses, like rehab courses and pre-post pregnancy, with the Girls Gone Strong team. And then you've got like the senior fitness. And then there was never a conversation that I ever knew about menopause. It would always go from the last thing in a woman's health I would see would be the post-pregnancy or postnatal, postpartum, whatever you want to call it. And then it flips to over 50. Like, there's not a menopause conversation happening in the fitness world, really. There is a little bit more now, but there certainly wasn't when I was going through it like 8-10 years ago. And so I never thought that I was going to write a book on menopause. It sort of wasn't something I planned to do, and it wasn't something I dreamed about doing. I didn't lie there going, I want to write a book all about menopause and it would be my life's dream. Like, I always thought I would write a book about traveling or, food. What happened is, went into my 40s feeling pretty good, I'd invested tons of time and energy and money in my health, and so I thought, I've got this aging business nailed, because going into your 40s is quite like a pivotal time in your life, right? Like, you mature and you feel a little bit less frivolous, and you're concerned about your health. Like, all of those things mattered to me. And then when I was 42, I started to feel very unwell, to the point that it started to impact my mental well-being as well as my emotional well-being, and those around me too. And I went to doctors for those 2 years who were desperate to help me. Like, there wasn't one of those doctors that was like dismissive, which happens a lot to women. They were like, we can see you're not well, we want to help you, but we don't know why. And I had really bad vertigo, which turned out to be migraines with aura. I even went to a vestibular rehabilitation, which I loved, but it didn't help me because it wasn't BPPV. It wasn't like a positional vertigo. It was all hormonally derived. So I had vertigo, which was part of the migraines. I would lose feeling in all my face and my hands. Like, I would have this numbness that was like I was having a stroke. In fact, I used to say to my husband, do I look like I'm having a stroke? Like, because I couldn't work out why it would happen to me. Then I would throw my guts up, and then ultimately I was struggling with depression, but that wasn't clear to me at the time. I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel myself. And eventually I broke down at my annual gynecology appointment, which was like 2 years after I'd started going to the doctor. And he said to me, I can see something's not right. What's the matter? And I, opened up, and he just said to me, well, these are clear symptoms of perimenopause. They're valid. I can help you. And I've seen this like every day of my life working as a gynecologist. You're in good hands type thing. And the first thing I said was, what's perimenopause? I'd never heard of perimenopause before, because it wasn't in my conversation pool in the fitness world, with my friends, with my mum. Nobody was talking about this. And so ultimately I fell down that rabbit hole and came out the other side with a book, right? Because I just was like, what's going on, and why was it so difficult for me to find this information, both from a medical standpoint and from a fitness and wellness standpoint? And then I did find some people talking about it, but I didn't relate to their message, because it was either people that were like doctors who had written books and it was just too medical, and my brain and my cognitive ability was so impaired. Like, women think they've gone through Alzheimer's because of the cognitive problems. I couldn't take it all in. And then the other books were like flippant or just like too funny. And I was like, I don't effing care about you making a joke about this. Yeah, we can find humor in this, but stop being so ambivalent about it. I actually want to know the reason why I'm feeling so shit, right? And so then I got connected with tons of experts in the area, which was so good for me. And I used to have a podcast, so I got these people on and I started writing about it. So I ended up just with a body of work that I thought, I'm going to put this into a book. And then there was some big gaping holes as well. So I had to do a tiny bit of work. I had to sort of like pull my finger out and actually look things up. But it was a learning experience for me. I wrote the book thinking I knew quite a lot and learned quite a lot in the process. And I hope that people reading it feel the same way, and they don't just go into this thinking, well, she's going through menopause, so she's just going to stop having her periods, have a few hot flashes and whatever, she might get fat. I mean, that's sort of the message I thought. I thought it was an older person's problem. I was 42 and feeling and looking quite well. I'm 50 now, I'm fully menopausal, and I was at 48, and people think that that's young. It's not. So, you know, like, I think we need to open up the dialogue, the conversation, and just make this something that we can, you know, munch on our salad at the dinner table, saying, yeah, I think menopause is kicking my butt today. You know, it shouldn't be so taboo, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all of that. It's such an interesting journey that you've taken. And starting at 42, it seems early for a lot of people. Like you said, they seem to think that it's an older person's problem. And like you said, you know, your periods will stop, a few hot flashes, and that's it. Can you tell us how you felt about struggling to find that information, and whatever your preconceptions were as well? Like you said, you didn't even know what perimenopause was, and how that contrasts, well, how that compares to how other people feel that you've come into contact with. And obviously, you know, you've been very motivated to get this information out, which, you know, we think it's fantastic, which is why we've got you on the show. We want to get this information out too. Yeah, how did it feel to realize that there just wasn't this there, and then hearing from other people as well? And why do you think it is so hard to get out there? There's a whole bunch.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few sort of parts to that. I can talk, by the way, so if ever you need me to stop talking, just call. I mean, the first part, the two years where I wasn't feeling like myself was the most desperate time I've ever felt in my whole life, because I thought, this is the new me. I thought, nobody knows why I'm struggling with my health like this. So maybe this, and I know I haven't got anything seriously wrong. I've had MRI scans, CAT scans, you name it. So they're telling me I don't have a serious illness. It's life-threatening. So maybe this is just how I have to be from now on. And maybe I don't have a good personality. Maybe I do need to be isolated from my friends because I can't stand people because they suck. You know, like, it was just like I didn't want to be around anyone, even my family. So those first 2 years, I felt isolated. And obviously I had mental health issues as well. For the first time in my life as well, I'd never had depression ever. So that was like a new phenomena for me. I just was in a state of despair and just was like, how do I live the rest of my, like, 50 years on from this, feeling as terrible as this? And it was a horrible, horrible time. And then when I got answers, then I was like, why couldn't any of those other doctors who I spoke to ask me, like, say, oh, well, you're 42. Potentially you're in perimenopause. We know that perimenopause can start in your late 30s and can last 8 to 10 years. The average age of menopause for a woman, meaning the time that they cease having their periods, is around 51. So I'm around 51, right? So, like, I'm within the age range, on the earlier side, but totally within the age range. And I just was like, why couldn't anyone help me? And then I was angry. Then I was like, this is just stupid. Turns out that doctors get zero medical training, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in Australia, because in the medical field, it's just considered another a life transformation. Like, it's not something that they consider to be like a medical condition. And I suppose the verbiage is interesting on that. But, you know, like, you know, childbirth, it is a transition that we go through, or like a life event, but it doesn't have to be painful, and you don't have to suffer. And there are medical things that you can do to make this easier, which is like what I did. And it turns out that 20% of gynecologists who go through their fellowship get menopause management training. So 80% of the gynecologists that you see, I know It's like one of them to me. And I was like, so I asked for a referral for a gynecologist because my doctor's told me he doesn't know anything about this, and the gynecologist probably won't be able to help me. It's just so upsetting. It's a disservice to women all over the world, and it has to change. And I got to say, in the UK, they're making huge strides because they created a menopause awareness campaign that they took straight to Parliament, who included menopause in the education curriculum because it's just not there. And it's an important part. So when I told my niece who was 13, she was like, oh, I didn't know that happened. They don't tell us about that. So that's happened. There are now prescribing guidelines that doctors have to follow in the UK, otherwise it's malpractice. They can't refuse, which is great. So they've done that. And then the next thing is they're looking to do is mandatory medical training. And I just don't understand why they don't get that out. And maybe there's new information coming out all the time and we understand how overworked and doctors are. So maybe they're just not up to date with things. But anyway, so one of the reasons...
We're not talking about a small percentage of the population going through this though. I mean, come on.
Yeah, 51% of the population are women. And so we're all going to go through it unless we never make it that far, right? So, I mean, it's something we're all going to go through. It's as inevitable as paying your taxes, right? Or death, right? It's going to happen. And so it was just like this huge mystery to me. And so I wrote this one article, God, ages ago, like 5 years ago. And it was something, I think I called it the shite that nobody told me about perimenopause. And it just went sort of viral in my world. Like it wasn't massive, but I think now it's been viewed about 60, 70,000 times. Like it's substantially being viewed because women are like, I had no idea. So I started a Facebook community that really is just a community to talk. There's nothing else happens in there. And everyone that comes in goes, could this be perimenopause? Is this what one of the symptoms are? I've no idea. And women are finding that their quality of life is impacted to the point where they are miserable and their doctors are dismissing them because they don't have the training to help them and they can't find valid information anywhere. And so one of the main reasons I wrote this book was I wanted to help women so that they weren't lost, frustrated and alone. Because I start the first part of the book, the first chapter is my story. And I only wanted it to be a small part of the book because I'm so tired of menopause memoirs. I'm a bit like, oh God, if I hear one more menopause story, I'm going to go crazy because we all have one, right? We all have the same one. And so I just was like, let's just get through like what went on with me, but what we know it is, what the treatments are, what the research shows, and then the strategies you can employ to just harness your health again. Because when you're in the pit of despair that can be, like perimenopause specifically, you often don't feel like there's any hope or anything you can do to feel better. And I think there is. I know there is, in fact. No, I know.
I think there's, I'm not going to say shame around it, but obviously there's embarrassment. People don't want to talk about some of the potential symptoms. You know, obviously we talked about the mental health side of things. We've also got the potential vulvovaginal atrophy, things that change with sexual function and bladder control. You know, there's this whole host of symptoms, and I guess they're not things that women will often bring up around the dinner table or bring up with friends over a glass of wine. Like as a pelvic health physio, these are things I talk about.
Well, Marika, I mean, you know that like almost every woman postmenopausal will have some type of vaginal atrophy in her lifetime because the estrogen's not there to, provide that sort of integrity. And so if you know that most postmenopausal women will go through this and only 8 to 10% go and get help from their doctor because they're mortified with shame, it's just so heartbreaking to me.
Heartbreaking.
My mum, she'll hate me for saying this. Oh my God, she won't listen. I won't tell her I said this, right? actually didn't want to tell me, but she was like, oh, I've had to go to the doctors. And I was like, well, good. Good because, she's in her 70s and she's struggling. And and those type of things, the vaginal atrophy, small leakage, small like painful sex or tearing, all of those things can make a woman's life completely miserable. Yet usually the solutions for helping them are simple. right? It's not like this is
Oh,
rocket science to help them at all. It's just the act of going. There's a really great book. I don't know if it's available in Australia, called Me and My Menopausal Vagina. It's
I have it on my bookshelf. I
it's
haven't read it yet.
brilliant. And so Jane Lewis is this like woman from the,
Has it got the icy pole on the front? Like
yeah,
icy.
it's got like an ice pop on the front,
Yeah.
and she she self-published it. Her daughter did all the graphics, and it's so funny, and the pictures are brilliant. Oh my God, I was dying laughing. And I've become good friends with her because she literally put her vagina on the line for everyone, and she talks about vaginas all day long. And now it's just another word, like, although
Yeah.
Twitter bans vagina all the time apparently because they're dickheads, but you know.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
I'm not on Twitter much, admittedly.
Yeah.
Hey, Amanda, we just kind of like jumped over some of
We
the treatments.
did. This is what I
We,
do. Tommy
no,
Tangent.
it's all good. I was thinking, should we step back and talk about like some of the hormonal changes and then why hormone therapy might be of benefit for people then? Like, I know that's a massive topic, but maybe just briefly, do you want to just talk about the hormone?
So I explained that perimenopause happens for between 8 to 10 years for women who are going through, and not everyone will have symptoms, but many do. And the stats are showing like 80% of women will struggle through perimenopause. And what happens during that time is progesterone falls. Progesterone we need for birthing, and so like for preparing the uterus for pregnancy, and because that's going to be something that just falls in almost like a slide going down. And then estrogen also falls, but it falls in a fluctuating manner. Like it's like batshit crazy. It goes all over the place, right? So, and that's the problem, right? Because it's usually the estrogen that causes the symptoms. And so a woman might be feeling fine one day, and the next day she'll wake up and she's joints are aching and she can't remember anything, and she's sweating like like a pig. It's crazy. Like there's no rhyme, no reason to the symptoms. And then she might not have some for ages, and then she might have a whole new set of symptoms because it's just not set in stone what's going to happen to you through perimenopause. I mean, in my book, I think I list about 34, 40 symptoms, and I know there's lists out there for 50, 60, like, is this perimenopause? It could be. And so that fluctuating nature of estrogen really causes women to go through this turmoil that they literally can't control. There's no way that they can stop their hormones falling and fluctuating like that. When they reach menopause, it's like a time stamp to say it's been 12 months since you've had a menstrual cycle and you no longer can reproduce, and from this day forward you are postmenopausal, and then that woman is postmenopausal for the rest of her life. So it's not just this time when you don't have periods. There's this shitty time beforehand, and then this post period afterwards where you still might have symptoms, and you are then now open to health conditions that you weren't susceptible to before, because estrogen receptors are all over the body. They protect our heart, they're in our joints, they cross the blood-brain barrier, they're everywhere. And so as soon as you're without that estrogen, then women are at a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. We see them more prone to osteoporosis. The stats of it in the US are not good. 40,000 women die as a result of breaking a hip every year, which is more than any women die of breast cancer of any age. 1 in 2 women will break a bone. And so and all of these are postmenopausal numbers. And then also Alzheimer's as well. There's a great book by Dr. Lisa Mosconi. I hope I've pronounced her name right, The XX Brain. And she is a PhD researcher that is purely looking at the impact of estrogen on our brain. So there's loads of like research being done now. What hormone therapy does is hormone sort of like redresses the balance slightly. It's a super micro dose of hormones. And so if people are worried about taking it and they're on the birth control pill, there's like 100 times less of the estrogen and progesterone than a birth control pill. But in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative issued a statement saying that hormone therapy caused a number of diseases, including breast cancer and cardiovascular disease. turns out that report was rushed to get out, and a lot of the researchers involved in it have pulled back and said this statement isn't true. And even though at the time that made front page headlines in the New York Times, they've never come out and said, oh, by the way, we misquoted, and actually women who are on HRT will actually live longer than those who aren't on HRT because of the protective nature of reintroducing estrogen back in the body. And so those fluctuating hormones that are going all over the place and going crazy, almost, they don't get balanced. There's no such thing as balance in hormones, which literally change second by second. And that's what the wellness like shills out there will try and sell you. But what it does is it sort of evens the playing field a bit, so those fluctuations maybe aren't as crazy, and you just feel a little bit less like a circus freak. You feel like more human again. And that's usually what most women say, is that they've started to feel like themselves again.
I'm really glad you brought up the controversy around the hormone therapy, because I remember it. You probably do as well.
I do, yeah. My mum, I wouldn't let my mum go on it. I was like, yeah. No way.
People were like, I'm not taking that because I'm going to get breast cancer. I don't even remember the articles and things at the time, but I do remember the knee-jerk reaction that came off it,
and the fear that we all felt.
I'm not going on HRT or or hormone therapy because I will die of breast cancer. And then there were people, and I remember talking to patients who put up with symptoms till they got so bad, like they would literally be on their knees with their symptoms before they would take the hormones. And then they were like, oh my God, I feel a billion times better. I wish I'd done this before. But they were pretty much willing to be, not a death's door, but they would have to be so bad to even contemplate going on it. And it's really interesting that it's come from that particular that article, and now there's this, we're sort of seeing things come back around. But I do believe that so many people still intrinsically have this thought that hormone therapy is dangerous.
Well, as humans, we love to hold on to fear, don't we? It's really hard to let go. And it's nearly 20 years since that's happened. And also the hormone therapy has advanced so much since then, and it's so sophisticated now. That was done with a particular type of hormone therapy. It was an oral synthetic pill, and it's actually the most researched. It's called Premarin, and it's the most researched medication out there as far as hormone therapy. And so it is a valid option for women. But if a woman doesn't want to take like an oral pill, there's transdermal ones, so you apply it via your skin, either with a gel or a patch, and it doesn't increase the risks at all. And so it's so great to know that the research is progressing and we are being supported. But even some doctors will hold on to that statement. They remember, like we all do, and so they're like, no, there's too much of a high risk of breast cancer. And so, it's really interesting. There's a brilliant book called Estrogen Matters, and I don't know if you've read it, but it's by Dr. Avram Blooming and Dr. Carol Tavris. And Dr. Avram Blooming is a breast cancer oncologist, and he's researched estrogen his whole entire life. And he's a genius man, and he went through the risk factors, and it's just worth buying the book to see this. And everything's got risk in our lives, don't we? We all always have to assess the risk. Like, that's why we put our seatbelts on. That's why people wear a mask. I don't know, like, be out there. I'm not an anti-masker. Anyway, and so, there's a risk to everything that we do. And so he did a chart of where taking hormone therapy fits in with other things that we do in our life every day. And you have more chance of getting breast cancer being a left-handed Finnish air stewardess than taking HRT. Like, it's so crazy. Like, if you're left-handed, you have a higher risk of getting breast cancer than you do if you take HRT. Eating grapefruit every day had a higher risk. Like, it's like insane. And I don't know where they get these numbers from, being Finnish and being an air stewardess. So all of them together. But it's just the risk factor is statistically insignificant. And in scientific terms, I'm led to understand that means it's like 0.01 in 1,000. It's not a significant risk to our health, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, and marketing of things like that, like, I mean, when you said left-handed Finnish stewardess, like, I mean, you're elevated in the air. We know that your radiation exposure as a flight attendant or a pilot or regular traveler is higher. That makes sense to me. The left-handed one, I don't understand. The fifth one, I don't know. Maybe it depends on vitamin D and a few other things that higher latitude people have issues with. But it's interesting, isn't it, that it's just easy to say, whoa, it increases the breast cancer risk, therefore you shouldn't take it. And yet so many people are suffering, as you said. And you know, it's interesting because I liked how you said that, you know, you can't balance out hormones, you're leveling the playing field, it's the consistency, right? It's
exactly that, Anthony.
It's the
Yeah,
consistency. Yeah. And from consistency, you can then see the variations a little bit more easily because you know what's in the system. And then you can, you know, that's how it's been explained to me before.
And it's exactly how, that's a really great way to think. And, you know, just following on from the breast cancer thing as well, I mean, this is not medical advice. I am not even suggesting this, but the medical advice from oncologists is that even women who have had breast cancer can still be candidates for HRT. Just because a woman has had breast cancer doesn't mean to say she can't have HRT. So it's a conversation that if anyone's listening, I would recommend that they speak to their medical team and assess the risks for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, we always say, speak to your local provider, of course.
Yeah.
Have trouble, you know, you for sure reach out to those who really love working in this area, and we know that you're open to hearing from people. You've got your Facebook group and everything, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So HRT is definite. Hormone replacement therapy is definitely helpful, like we just said, for the consistency side of things. What are the is a leading question because I know where you want to go, but what other things can people do? Because I think no matter what the condition is, be it menopause, be it any other pelvic or medical condition, people really don't enjoy the helplessness feeling. People want to do something about what's happening to them. They want to take charge in some way. What are some of the other things that you found helpful? It might be in your book or just in general that you found helpful for.
Let me just have a look. I've got about 300 pages worth of stuff. No, like for sure. So that's a great question. And so, you know, one of the things that frustrated me, Anthony, was that when I was in my the worst part of the 2 years not knowing, I still continued to do the things that I wanted to do, but then would have, like, say for example, I'd go for a run. If I was sort of feeling a bit better, I'd go for a run, but then I'd have like 3 days where I'd be exhausted and I'd be like, well, why did that just happen? I used to be able to go for a 5K run and just be fine. It was nothing. And so I realized that things had started to shift in my body and that my response to things wasn't as it used to be. And so the research has led, and a great person to follow is Dr. Stacey Sims, who's over the pond in Papamoa area in New Zealand. And a quick detour here, like, so I have family in Papamoa, and I'd connected with Dr. Stacey Sims, and she's like, you know that I'm in Mount Maunganui and it literally is 3 miles away. So I went for a run and we had a coffee together. Like, that's just one of those random, like, small world stories, which I love. She researches perimenopause and menopause in athletes more specifically. So looking at the response to the body and what happens. And, you know, she talks about, like, those fluctuating hormones through perimenopause specifically can leave our body in sort of a catabolic breakdown state. So, you know, estrogen is intrinsically connected with cortisol, and so our bodies, women really struggle to cope a lot of the time, and it's no point just saying calm down. I can't. And it literally, that's what I was. Yeah, you're juggling balls, you've probably got high cortisol, high stress, and then people are telling you to fast, to lose weight, and your body's going, yeah, give me more stress. I need that. And then I'll go for a 5K run, and I'm doing this 5K run, and then I'm lying on the sofa 3 days later going, why was that so bad? Well, it's everything, right? It's never just one thing. And so the way our losing those hormones impacts the body can feel really hard on it. Like, so for example, what I realized I needed to do is that I needed to pull back from the running, and I started going for ones. I walk run like a one. I didn't just make that up, really. But so I would go for a run and then I would like walk in between, and it was like so hard for me, who's always been like full on hardcore, to be like, oh, I'm a walk runner now. That's the place I am. It was a little bit difficult to sort of like take on board, and a lot of like athletic people really struggle with their energy levels. Low estrogen, falling estrogen, can leave women with chronic fatigue that literally can't be resolved with sleep or napping. It's like just there. It's almost like when I had the COVID, it was like, I got to work within this energy envelope that's given to me. So some of the things that like I suggest to women are like, if you're in that state where you're lying in repose on the sofa for 3 days, you're not going to be exercising. It's like just not there for you. You don't have that energy sort of space to work with. But if you feel like you can, you should go for a walk. Get outside. We know the benefits of walking. There's an untold number of studies on that. So get outside, get with nature, get the endorphins flowing, just start to feel a little bit better. So the first thing I get women to do is trying to move every day if they can. Like, there's not many times when you can't actually get out, even walking around the garden, like really. And I just think it's so beneficial. Well, I know it's so beneficial for women when they feel like they want to start moving again. Like, the things like HIIT training can sometimes be a bit much for the body to cope with. Again, it's like the whole recovery thing. Like they can do like a hard like HIIT to batter session, and then the next day just feel like crap again. So definitely, like I am like, do an assessment of your body. If you really feel like this workout is going to benefit you now, and you can sort of get a bit of feedback, then go for it. But if you're not quite there, why don't you just take it down and do some strength training, which we know is brilliant for you during perimenopause and menopause. Like, it's something every woman should do, instead of all the jumpy burpees and stuff that probably aren't going to benefit you. I also want women to prioritize recovery, and that was a hard pill for me to swallow too. Like, I don't like to stop, but then I was like taking like prescribed days off. Like, I would be like, if I do a strength training session today and it's pretty intense, I'm going to see how I feel tomorrow. Sometimes the strength training sessions I felt like I could do back to back, but if I went for a run and I felt good enough to go for a run, I always took the next day off. I needed it, right? And I realized that was something that we know happens through perimenopause. It's just a shift in the body. Post-menopause now, I'm not having any of those problems at all, and the research sort of backs that as well. So that's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel as well, to say that, you know, you might have some challenging years where you can't quite push as hard as you used to, and maybe you should do some more sophisticated exercises, like take up yoga on those days when you're resting, walk more, and then really take on board strength training like pure brawn strength, instead of like always having like something jumpy in them. People love doing burpees in the workout, and I've never understood that, but you know, sorry, I'm not a burpee hater. Another thing that happens through perimenopause is muscle protein synthesis is impacted. Essentially, the ability to convert protein into building and maintaining lean muscle mass. So unless a woman is prioritizing protein in her diet, which I know that we're all talking about all the time, but with aging and then through menopause, it's so important. So they're the things that I think are really helpful to women. Move daily, strength train if you can, add protein, and recover. And then outside of that, it's really important to have the conversation about how you do manage stress. And so those recovery days are important, but also the time out that you take for yourself, where you sit back and you go, what's the most important thing I can do for myself right now in order to have a successful day, to not like shit on anyone, like to be nice to my family. And for me, it was sitting outside with a cup of coffee every morning, just being by myself, sort of grounding, doing some breath work. And I do the breath work for my pelvic health anyway. You'll be happy to hear, Marika. Like, I do big diaphragmatic breaths just to feel ready to start the day. Yeah, just like, oh my God, get the parasympathetic nervous system into play. And then the last part of it is the conversations we have with ourselves over aging and through menopause, and how we judge ourselves too much and how we put too much stress and pressure on ourselves to be these perfect mothers, wives, whatever. And it's just bullshit. It's just exhausting. There's too much going on. And so it's like the whole of all of that together, which I make it sound really complicated, but I do try and break it down into like these little manageable chunks in the book. I'm like, just why don't you try this today? Why don't you try sitting on the edge of your bed before you even do the day and just doing 5 big belly breaths? Just see how that feels. Like, we know the benefits of those type of things, right?
Yeah, it's really, really great advice, you know, and I know for both Marika and I, totally suits our biases and our beliefs and what we both teach, you know. And what I really loved was the holistic nature of the approach. Okay, so we've got the biological, we're looking at the hormone replacement therapy, we're looking at strength training and the benefits of that, and with that comes, well, you need adequate protein intake to ensure that you can maintain and develop you know, your muscle strength. We know that it's great for bone strength. We've already talked about, you know, the likelihood of fracturing bones, especially in the postmenopausal period, as well as managing the stress and doing the self-care, promoting awareness of, you know, even the breathing in the parasympathetic system and what that looks like, you know, managing your relationships and your activities, and even modifying the exercises, not forever, just for now, while you're in this period of time, not because you're broken, but just because you're aware that, hey, sometimes the recovery takes a little bit longer. And whilst you used to be able to not have to warm up and not stretch, well, maybe these are helpful, not because you're stretching and warming up, but because it allows a different type of activity, which is still useful. And yeah, the HIIT training, the CrossFit, whatever, look, it just might look different for you at the moment. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just be aware of the signs and understand the recovery period. And, you know, like you said, in the research as well as your own personal experience, things can change again once you're through this perimenopausal period. And one of the things that I was taught in my pelvic health training was that menopause doesn't occur like falling off a cliff. It's not like one day, well, that's it. You know, the changes start in your 30s, as you've mentioned already. And for some women, it starts really early, right? It starts really early, and it depends on the medical conditions and things like that. Oh, I love all of this.
Yeah, you know, like the early menopause, it's 1 in 100 women will go through premature ovarian insufficiency, I think it's called POI, and it's early menopause, and it's almost exclusively misdiagnosed. They get no help, and the help for them, for women going through early menopause, is to get them on to a low dosage birth control pill as soon as possible, or a higher dosage HRT, like something that, because they're the ones with the huger health risks to the osteoporosis. And even the fact that women get hot flushes, they've been linked to like acute anxiety, depression, heart problems, and even advanced Alzheimer's. There's some connection to it. So like even the symptoms can cause health conditions if they're left and they're ignored, right? So I think that, you know, one of the big shifts that I've had is I've never been vain, and I've never been the 20-year-old trying to, like, you know, like take pictures. And you don't see me doing like the thirst trap pictures on look at my bum like that. Yeah, but you know, but I definitely was one of those people that was like, I got 6 weeks till I'm going to Corfu. I better just like have 1,000 calories a day and only eat salads, so I can go out on the lash and look good in my bikini, right? So, but like, and my fitness used to be all about like probably looking good, from not really from a super vain place, but like looking good, you know, as best as I can, feeling good. But now, like, there's a shift that happens. And for my leader and most women I speak to now, it's like, I just want to really take really good care of my health and prioritize that. I don't care. Like, it's really good if I can deadlift my body weight times 1 or 1.5, but the priority is I just want to feel good. I want to feel strong and empowered. And then if that means that I look good in the meantime and I can lift heavier, then that's great. But it's not the driver for a lot of women anymore, which I love, actually. It's so refreshing. Because and even like me getting COVID, I felt a little bit of a hypocrite. Like, here's my book about thriving, and then I literally don't thrive. But one of the things that the doctor said to me is that, this took hold of you, but your immune system is doing a great job. They obviously can test that with the blood work, and they were like, you haven't got any permanent damage, and it's because you've got a robust immune system. And that's clearly been something that's happened from all of the the good nutrition and exercise and lifestyle choices that I've made. And so I think that, like, prioritizing that when you've had health issues and things get thrown in your face, you're like, I'm going to change my attitude about this.
And we've definitely noticed that clinically, having
yeah.
people we haven't seen for a while. I don't know about you, Auntie, people I haven't seen for a while who around, like, once we had that initial lockdown, then people just coming back going like, I want to move more. I want to feel better. But one thing I just wanted to touch on, because I feel like it would be remiss of us not to mention weight. I hate to bring it up because I'm a therapist who doesn't like to focus on body weight as being, a goal for people, unless it's obviously, if that's a goal for them, then we can address that. But I sort of feel like around the perimenopausal and the early postmenopausal period, because a lot of women do put on weight, especially around the midsection. And I know for some of us who've never had tummies, like, putting weight there is a new thing. And it can be very distressing for some people. And yes. I just want to talk to that a little bit in terms of hormonally what might be going on there, maybe some of the risks, but also, you talked about not thrashing yourself with high intensity cardio kind of stuff. And that's kind of where I find a lot of women are coming from. They're just almost punishing themselves, like, oh, I'm stacking on this weight. I must be lazy. I must be eating wrong. I must be not doing enough. And then, then you're driving up that cortisol even more and punishing yourself by either going on, like limiting the food intake, so going into a deficit, or trying to do a intermittent fasting, or putting these changes rather than those things you talked about before, those what we call at GGS, those big rocks. And I know precision nutrition are the same, those big rocks, the sleep, the recovery, the exercise that sort of, nourishes you, the food intake, that is the protein and the vegetables and, that kind of stuff. So I just want to talk a little bit about the weight increase, because I do think that's something that a lot of women worry about.
It's a very hard chapter for me to write. I have one chapter I have a nutrition section that's not going to blow anyone's mind who has studied any basic nutrition science. I talk about the how to eat and then what the macronutrients do and what the nuances are through menopause. But then I have a whole chapter, and I think it's called, in fact, this is funny. My husband is starting to read my book, and it's a really cringy thing for me to see him like sat looking, and I'm like, ooh, I say things about you in there you maybe don't want to see. But then I asked my son, I said, where's your dad? And he went, he's out there finding out why you were so bloody fat, because that's what I call one of the chapters. It's like, why am I so bloody fat? And it's because, and I didn't want to avoid it, but I actually found it very difficult to write, because it's always the number one question. Why have I put so much weight on, right? It's all because of menopause, and they blame menopause. And then I wanted to tell women what we know from the research, what I've experienced myself personally, and then like what they can do about it, without sort of being dismissive and saying you can't blame everything on menopause. But I almost want to say that too, like it's a very hard balance. And then I also need to have the conversation about, we really have to stop body shaming. We really do. We have to pull away from restriction. We have to pull away from the toxic diet culture. But yeah, it's still okay to lose weight if that suits your, you know, your mindset or your lifestyle goals or whatever. Like, so we have to find the messy middle. And so I do talk about that, and I did put weight on myself, and so I sort of talk from experience, but I didn't put much on, and I also talk about that as well. I want to say, like, I understand you, but you know, I put 10 pound on. I didn't put 30 or 40 or 50 pound on like some people do, right? So the stats aren't in our favor. Perimenopausal women, there's something like 9 out of 10 in a survey for the North American Menopause Society said they put on 10 pounds in perimenopause or through menopause. 70% worldwide of women put weight on through this time, right? So therefore women will say, well, it's because of menopause. Well, so yes, some things are happening, right? But this is a change in our life, and we have to change the way we approach food and diet and everything, right? So of course the sleep, the stress, all of those things have to be in check. If you're doing everything right, but you're sleeping 3 hours a night and then you're doing a HIIT training thing, they're the two places you need to start, right? We know that already. But there's a couple of things that happen that make that a bit more challenging. So the way to do it, the nutritional basic information hasn't changed, and it doesn't change through menopause. There is no menopause specific diet. The nutritional science still is sound, but you've got a few more hurdles to jump. And menopause just makes things really shitty and hard, right? But to get there, you've just got to persevere and do the long-term stuff and stick with it. So a couple of things. Fat deposits shift. And they shift from us being like a typical like pear shape to an apple shape. And so we see the way that fat deposits lie on women, and we end up with these like fatter bellies, and we never had them before. So even women that don't really put weight on may get bigger around the waist, and that's hard, like being the ultimate shapeshifter, right? And so women, I call it the menopause flesh blanket. Like, it just feels like there's this fat under your arms, and somebody's like, where did this come from? And it's icky for some women, right? So there's a conversation to be had, like, is it really icky? Like, we know fat is actually a pretty cool substance in the body. It's metabolically active. We need it. And actually, some estrogen is produced in adipose tissue. So that means a little bit of fat is probably good for you, but we need to find a balance where it's then isn't too much and it becomes a risk to your health. And, you know, other barriers that sort of like come along is that I talked about muscle protein synthesis, and we see a rapid decline in muscle, the ability to maintain muscle, but we gain fat quicker. And so, like, the prioritizing of protein and the strength training becomes more important than ever, as well as for all of the health benefits, if weight management is something that a woman wants to like take control of. And we also know protein is like the queen, so you should just be eating lots of it anyway. The other hormones that get impacted as well as cortisol is insulin is also impacted. Some women lose that insulin sensitivity and become a little bit insulin resistant. And so definitely if you're still eating the foods that are gonna sort of, and it's obviously lifestyle. We know that insulin's impacted by sleep and rest and moving and all of those things, and the diet plays some role in that too. So maybe there needs to be some changes to help with the insulin resistant problem. Two of the hormones that are impacted are ghrelin and leptin. So our hunger hormones and our satiating hormones are a little bit out of whack. And that's where precision nutrition is so great, because it goes through the, are you hungry? Do you recognize true hunger? Can you eat slowly, and can you eat until you're satisfied? If you have to spend weeks and months retraining and refocusing on those elements because your body is all out of whack, and it's like saying, feed me now all the time and I'm never ever going to be full, then you might need to like dial back and like work on these behavioral habits. And you know, it's interesting because women also get really bad like gut issues through menopause. So there'll be sometimes a lot of like water retention and bloating that can mask what real fat gain is as well. So, you know, there's all these things happening. And so it can be like really frustrating and distressing for women to see their bodies sort of like shift quickly. And it usually is a quick shift. Over a year or two, women can put this weight on, and then they're like, I need a 21-day detox, otherwise I'm never ever going to lose this weight. And you know, that's what I see out there personally on the market, is these people that are trying to sell that. And I'm actually trying to sell the opposite. I'm trying to say, let's just like pull back. Let's look at your whole lifestyle. Let's see the things that you can like downgrade a little bit to manage your stress. Let's work on behavioral habits that get you to understand what it feels to be truly nourished, right? Before we start freaking out about you like eating so much less, eating 1,000 calories a day or whatever it is they tell you to do. But in fairness and in truth, the true way to lose weight is in an energy deficit. That's how it happens. Our metabolic rate does slow down in menopause, and it does slow down with age, but not significantly enough that we can say my metabolism is screwed because of menopause. It's likely to be like 200 calories. It's likely to be a muffin, you know, like it's not significant.
That was such a great answer. Thank you so much for that, Amanda. It's given me lots of food for thought.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I like the fact that
Good one. Yeah, no, food for thought. You're clever.
I think people, like you said, we women often, or people in general, we all want a quick fix, right? We want something that is going to be the tablet that solves the problem, the diet that'll fix the problem, and all the research, you know, does not support diets. 99% of diets fail. So it's really, you know, I love that the messaging that I'm hearing from you is about learning to tap into those sensations of when you're hungry. Are you truly hungry? Have you just eaten? You know, what is going on is it that I'm bored? Is it that I can smell something around? Is it habit? You know, like I know with me, there are some triggers they're just habits. And then when I go distract myself with something else, I'm like, actually, no, I wasn't hungry at all. And I know we talked in the past, maybe it was with Molly Anthony, when we talked about the satiation, you know, feeling, and how for some of us who were brought up that you eat everything on your plate, yes, and you are not allowed to leave anything behind because we had no money growing up, and it was just that if you left food behind, that was disrespectful, and it was all the rest of it. So we grew up, and my husband's the same. We grew up, you cannot leave anything on the plate. And so it's taking me a long time to actually learn to kind of eat a bit slower, for one thing, but also to actually tap in and go, well, do I need to finish this plate? Am I just finishing it because it's there? Or do I actually feel like I need that to nourish my body? And so learning that stuff, you know, that can take a really long time if that's,
yeah. And it can take
learning
years.
that at the age of 50.
It can take years to unpick all of that, right? That's ingrained in us. I was the same too, right? Working class family. I had to eat peas, stuff that like makes me gag to this day. But like it was the same thing. It was like you realize that this food was important, and you had to finish it because there was starving children in Africa.
Yes. And I remember saying, why can't we just post it to them? Because I don't want to eat these Brussels sprouts, whatever. Amanda, I'm cognizant of the fact that we've had you for over an hour now, but I just have one more question, if that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. The last question I just want to ask was about the sort of, from the transition side of things in terms of life stages. You kind of, you know, tapped on that a little bit, and I think there's a bit in the book that I haven't got up to yet, but I remember reading somewhere, maybe it was Sarah Gottfried or someone like that, who was talking about, I guess, that transition through menopause also being, you know, what else is going on in our lives, and how, you know, maybe hundreds of years ago, the kids would have been up, gone, out of the nest, and this would be a time where we would basically almost go out on our own and be going on a new life journey of discovery, self-discovery, and other things, and almost like within our bodies, that's what we are designed to be doing in our 40s, because we're not supposed to be raising kids anymore. That's kind of done. And it can be almost like this difficult time when we're still, you know, working, raising children, doing 1,000,001 things, whereas potentially at a sort of genetic level, biological level, we are supposed to be in this time where we're having more time by ourselves, going out and exploring the world. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're also living longer. The average age of a woman now is 81 years in North America. I bet it's similar like in Australia. And so, we're living a lot longer. And like historically, if you go back, hundreds and hundreds of years, women usually would die around menopause. It wasn't, we didn't live much longer than that. And so all of the like health issues that we're dealing with are actually fairly new because we're living so much longer without estrogen. It's sort of like a new field of medicine almost, which is interesting. But from a circumstantial point of view, I mean, a lot of women who have had children, obviously not every woman does, are having children later in their lives. So their daughters may be going through puberty when you're going through menopause, and that was like probably something that never happened earlier on. The estrogen impacts your oxytocin levels as well, which is like, your love hormone, your bonding hormone. It's the one that gets produced when you start breastfeeding, and that sort of declines a little bit. And I think, and some women feel like pulled from aging parents, juggling a full-time job, kids that are either driving them nuts or they become empty nesters and they just feel like, where's my purpose gone? Hating their husbands, divorce rates higher, like actually it's awful to say, but suicide rate is higher in women through menopause. Like it's just a very challenging time for women. And then, I've polled women in my community and I've asked them, and they'll say things like, I'm bored of myself, I'm frustrated, I'm exhausted, I don't have any mojo, I have no zest for life. And it's like these feelings where they just feel like, one, they don't recognize themselves, they've lost belief in themselves, they've definitely lost the ability to find any strength in themselves. And I recognize that too. I also recognize that like through so small circumstances that happened in my own life as well as in conversation. And, there's psychological strategies that women can sort of like harness. One of the chapters in my book is called Shift Happens, and it's about that mindset shift, right? I want to help women know that moving from the we to me mindset, which happens when that sort of oxytocin level starts to like go down a bit, it's okay to then say, I'm super important. And actually there's a hierarchy, and I used to be at the bottom because I put everyone else before me, and now I'm going to put myself first. And you'd be quite surprised to realize that nobody minds you doing that. Like my family certainly never said, why is she taking time for herself instead of caring for us? They don't. They want you to be well and healthy and thriving, right? And most women are basically surviving through this. And so one, it's it's okay to put yourself first. It's, in fact, I think it's important. It should be part of your self-preservation. Two, I think it's really important to try and harness and find out what are your strengths. And this is I actually have this in the book, and it's a website called viacharacter.org, and it's a psychological test you can take that allows you to find out what your strengths are. And there's another one that's also about values, valuecenter.com. And that's, values are not goals. Values are, what's the most important thing to you in your life and what makes you like want to get up in the morning. And for me, it was like family, friends, kindness, altruism, things like that, things that like float my boat basically, right? And then strengths are character traits that you thrive at. So when I did it, for example, mine came out at curiosity. And then after that, it was like empathy, I think, right? But the curiosity one was, I was like, oh, I don't like that one. I want to do the test again. But curiosity in psychological terms is to be interested in something enough to sort of fall down the rabbit hole, to gather information, to garner it, and then to share it to help other people. Similar to what you guys are doing, right? It's like what the purpose of your podcast. You want to delve deep into situations so that you can help other people. It's literally the only reason you do it, right? Because you want to give information. And then I thought to myself, well, actually that makes so much sense to me. It helped me write the book. And so whenever I go off down these paths and I'm like, oh God, I've got to come back, I'm like, no, actually, this is something that it goes with your mindset. It really helps you, and it helps you live the life you want to lead. And then what happens is then you're allowed to say no to people, and you're allowed to make choices, and then you end up like creating and carving this path that completely suits you and all of your values and strengths. And so that to me was a game changer through aging. I think more than menopause, just getting older, it's just been so brilliant to actually always come back to these things and just go, yeah, I'm not going to go on this podcast because I don't believe in this person or what she sells or, you know, the product she's selling. It doesn't suit what's in my heart. So I'm not going to do it. And it's okay to say no, like that type of thing. And I think it's super important.
Learning to say no. Such a good life lesson.
Yes, indeed. Look, thank you so much for your time so far. And there's been so much, and I've really enjoyed listening and thinking and considering and taking the journey with you. It's been a sensational time. We've covered lots of different things: the perimenopausal period, the the consistency and HRT and how it's different to 20 years ago when it was only one type of HRT that was studied, and the effects that the fear has had, and having it put into perspective so that we can just have information and decision making in a considered way, in a contextual way, instead of just that, oh no, you can have increased breast cancer. And also the other things that lead to empowered people. So, being able to understand the role of strength training and making sure you have enough protein in your diet, being able to understand the way that your body reacts and needs to recover differently because of the fluctuations in the hormones, as well as the way that you may have to change the way you do life and exercise, not forever, just temporarily, just for now. And there's so much societal expectations. And then, there's also the deposition of fat changes, and the tough discussion, finding that messy middle, because we don't want to body shame people, and yet there are health issues that come from increased visceral fat. And, we talked about the hormones that are affected, not just progesterone and estrogen, but insulin, as well as ghrelin and leptin, right?
Yeah.
So, and how that affects the way that you feel appetite and satiation, and tuning into that, being aware of that, and stepping back and looking at, oh, why do I feel this? Am I hungry, or is it a habit? So there's been lots of great information about that. And the thing that I've loved is just how much we're talking about the whole person going through perimenopause and menopause, because it's things like, being able to say no, and understanding that it's okay that you prioritize your health and step back and say, no, that does not fit with my values, and these are my strengths, and being okay with that. And really enjoyed that. You've given us some resources dotted throughout. I've tried to type them all down. I'm sure that there's lots in the book. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the book and how people can get in contact with you? And we'll go from there.
No, all I was going to say is I can't wait for you to go through menopause, because you've just nailed it. No, but you know what? I mean, everything that you spoke about can sort of be applied to anyone, really, right? I mean, apart from obviously the hormonal changes, but the attitude and the focuses and for as far as the menopause is concerned, like, to me, it's just about education and knowledge equals choice. And that's what women don't have right now. They need choice so that they can advocate for themselves and they can make better decisions. And so, the book, I don't think it's available in the Southern Hemisphere yet, but I do know people in Australia and New Zealand who have it. So I think you can order it through the book depository. But if you go to Amazon.com, you can get the ebook. The ebook is available. And you can find me at my website, which is fitandchips.com, FITNCHIPS.com. fitandchips.com, and actually that leads you to like my menopause community, my Instagram. I love my Instagram page. I'm really naughty on there. I sort of try and give lots of information, but I also am a bit sweary. And my mom always texts me and tells me off. So Instagram, Facebook, everything's on there, and actually a link to where you can buy the book as well. Everything's there.
That's sensational. And when I looked at your website when we first connected,
yeah,
it's like, she's in Texas and she's got Fit and Chips. Like, that's not a Texas thing as far as I thought. And then when I heard your accent today, I went, oh yeah,
all makes sense. Yeah.
And I just love some of the expressions that have popped out in this podcast, like going out on the lash, because I spent 10 years in London and it's been a while since I've heard some of these terms. I love it.
And you're in Houston. I haven't been to Houston yet. I've been to Austin and to Dallas.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Last year, actually, I've been to Austin a few times, but it's also where Franklin Barbecue is. And, you know, Central Texas brisket is just amazing. But,
oh yeah, we love the barbecue here, but it's a bit like having lasagna. You have it like once a year because it's just so intense. Yeah. Well, if you do come to Texas or Houston, give me a shout, Anthony, for sure. When we're allowed to do all of that again, you know.
Look, as soon as I'm allowed to, I've got good friends in Texas. They're fantastic, and you know, for sure, we'll be doing that. Look, thank you very much for your time. We've enjoyed it. And we'll put all the show notes in there. We'll try to put any references that we can there. And we look forward to speaking to you soon.
It was great to meet you guys. I loved it. It was a nice way to end my day. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for staying up late. And everyone go check out Menopocalypse. Because I'm halfway through it, as I said. It's Amanda is a very good writer. It's very easy to follow. It's that really nice blend of the science, but also a bit of humor in there, and peppered with her personal experiences and some of the experiences of the people in her group as well. So it's a very easy read, I found, in a you know, like it's a nice read, and it's very practical, and also like I'm up to the second half of the book, which is all the actual steps that you can take to help, you know, and it's, like I said, it's a book of hope because it's giving people actual strategies so that we're not sitting in this space of shit, I feel horrible, I don't know what to do, my doctor's not really helping me, it's not something that anyone's talking about. It's there. So I would encourage anyone who's sort of heading down this path to go check it out. And as we said, we'll put the links in the show notes, but you can find it on Fit and Chips.
Yay! Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks very much. Well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to hit like if you enjoyed the episode, and leave any comments or questions below. We'd really like to hear from you.
If you haven't already hit subscribe, please do so now so that you can be kept notified when we release our next episode.
Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you back with us for another episode of the Women's Health Podcast.